Have you ever felt drained, giving and giving, only to realize you've been taken advantage of? Maybe it's a friend who constantly leans on you but never reciprocates, or a colleague who keeps asking for favors without any consideration for your time. You start to wonder, when did it all become one-sided? If you've ever found yourself in this situation, you're not alone. Many of us have been there, unsure how to stop the cycle of giving without boundaries. This is where Stoicism can help. It teaches us how to take control of our own energy, set clear boundaries, and protect our peace. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca offer powerful insights on how we can stop being taken advantage of and reclaim our power in the process. Let's dive into 6 key reasons why people take advantage of you and how you can stop it today. Reason 1. You give too much without boundaries. You might have experienced it before, always being the one to give, whether it's your time, energy, or resources, without ever receiving the same in return. It's easy to fall into this trap, especially when we believe that being generous is a virtue. However, as Stoicism teaches us, true generosity requires boundaries, and without them, we risk being drained by others' demands without any regard for our own well-being. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This quote captures the essence of what it means to take control of our personal energy and protect our peace. Without boundaries, others will naturally take advantage of our kindness, whether they mean to or not. The issue arises when we don't recognize our limits, and the more we give without saying no, the more people begin to expect it. Let's consider a real-life example. Imagine a friend who constantly reaches out for help, asking for favors, and even emotional support. But when it's your turn to ask for a little bit of their time, they're nowhere to be found. This one-sided dynamic might feel like a friendship, but in reality, you're merely playing the role of a caretaker for someone who doesn't respect your efforts. The more you give without boundaries, the more they expect, and soon enough, their gratitude fades, leaving you feeling depleted and unappreciated. Stoicism provides us with the wisdom to deal with this kind of imbalance. Setting healthy boundaries is not about being selfish or uncaring. It's about self-respect. The Stoic solution is to understand that your time and energy are valuable, and giving without limit does not serve anyone in the long run, not you, and not even the people you're trying to help. Think of it this way. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you are constantly depleting yourself, you won't be able to help anyone in a meaningful way. The Stoics teach us that we must first respect ourselves before we can genuinely be of service to others. Setting boundaries is how we protect our mental and emotional health, ensuring that our generosity doesn't leave us exhausted or resentful. It's a sign of strength, not weakness, to say no when necessary. When we set clear boundaries, we show others how to treat us, and we remind ourselves that we are worthy of respect and care. By setting boundaries, you are reclaiming your power over your life. You're no longer letting others dictate how much you give. Instead, you're making a conscious choice to only give what is sustainable for you, ensuring that it doesn't come at the cost of your peace or well-being. When you give with intention and limits, your generosity becomes more meaningful, more impactful, and more appreciated. Imagine telling yourself, "I will no longer give until I am depleted. I will give in ways that uplift both myself and others." This shift in mindset transforms your relationships. Those around you will begin to value your efforts more because they will understand that your time and energy are not infinite. You teach them that your support isn't something to be taken for granted, but something that is freely offered when it's sustainable for you. This concept of boundaries isn't just theoretical, it has practical applications in everyday life. Think about a time when you overextended yourself to help someone, only to realize they were taking advantage of you. Now, think about how you could have handled it differently by establishing clear boundaries early on. The difference is significant. Boundaries protect your energy and prevent the resentment that builds when you're constantly giving without receiving. Now you may be thinking, but doesn't this go against the idea of being generous? Not at all. Stoicism teaches that true generosity involves discernment. It's about knowing when to give and when to protect your peace. It's about giving wisely and not letting others exploit your kindness. Setting boundaries allows you to be generous in a way that doesn't leave you feeling empty or taken advantage of. So, how do we start practicing this Stoic principle of boundaries? Begin by recognizing the patterns in your own life. Are there relationships where you feel drained or unappreciated? Are you giving too much to the point of resentment? These are signs that it's time to set boundaries. Start small, but be firm. You don't have to be rude or confrontational. Simply stating, "I have other commitments today. I can't help you right now," is enough to start shifting the dynamic. Over time, people will respect your boundaries and you'll start to feel more at peace, knowing that you're not being taken advantage of. Setting boundaries might be uncomfortable at first, but the more you practice, the easier it becomes. And in the long run, it leads to healthier, more balanced relationships. It's a win-win. You protect your peace, and others learn to respect your time and energy. As we move forward, let's take a deeper dive into why it's so crucial to recognize when people are crossing these boundaries. Next, we'll explore how ignoring red flags can lead to manipulation and exploitation, and how Stoicism teaches us to trust our intuition to protect ourselves from harm. Reason 2. You ignore red flags. There are moments in life when something doesn't quite feel right. You might ignore it, chalk it up to a bad day, or convince yourself that it's just a misunderstanding. But the truth is, these red flags are not to be ignored. Stoicism teaches us the importance of paying attention to what our instincts are telling us, especially when it comes to our relationships and interactions with others. As Epictetus wisely said, "Circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself." This powerful quote reminds us that people show us who they are through their actions, not just their words. Yet, how often do we ignore the signs that are right in front of us? Let's explore this concept with a real-life example. Imagine you have a friend who consistently breaks promises. They might say they'll show up to help you, but they never do. Or they assure you that they'll make things right, only to disappear again. Despite all the broken commitments, you continue to accept their excuses and maintain the friendship, hoping they'll change or that things will eventually improve. However, this pattern doesn't change. Instead of growing closer, the relationship begins to drain you. What you've ignored all along is that this behavior is a clear red flag. You've seen it before, but you kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. Each time, you ignore the warning signs and continue to invest your time and energy into a relationship that isn't reciprocal. This is a perfect example of how we often ignore red flags because we hope things will improve. But the truth is that by doing so, we are enabling behavior that ultimately harms us. Stoicism offers a valuable lesson here. Trust your intuition. Our instincts, if we're willing to listen, can guide us through situations where our rational minds might fail. When something feels off, there's a reason. The Stoics knew that inner peace comes from aligning ourselves with reason and truth. By ignoring red flags, we disregard that inner wisdom. It's like walking into a storm without checking the weather first. You can sense the danger, but you ignore it until it's too late. Epictetus's quote highlights that our experiences don't shape us, but rather they reveal who we are. In the same way, a person's repeated actions will reveal their true character, regardless of the promises they make or the words they say. When we continue to ignore the red flags, we allow others to define our boundaries for us. Instead of protecting our peace, we let our expectations for others shape how we behave. But Stoicism teaches us that we have the power to control our responses. If someone repeatedly shows us who they are through broken promises or actions that disregard our feelings, it's our responsibility to take a step back. Trusting your intuition means recognizing when your boundaries are being crossed and deciding not to ignore those signs. It's about listening to that inner voice that tells you when something isn't right and making the choice to take action. Here's how this works in practice. Imagine you're in a business relationship where a colleague consistently promises to share their work, but time and again, they don't deliver. Your intuition tells you that this person isn't as reliable as they portray themselves to be, yet you continue to give them the benefit of the doubt. Over time, you're left doing their work, feeling overburdened and frustrated. The lesson here is that by ignoring the red flags, you've unknowingly allowed the situation to escalate. You've given them more chances than they deserve, and in doing so, you've lost valuable time and energy that could have been better spent on more productive endeavors. The Stoic solution is simple but powerful. Pay attention to your instincts. The next time you feel uneasy or something doesn't feel right, don't dismiss it. Act on it. Trusting your intuition is an act of self-respect. It means understanding that your time, energy, and peace of mind are valuable, and it's up to you to protect them. This doesn't mean shutting people out or assuming the worst about others, but rather it means recognizing when a pattern of behavior is harmful and making the decision to step away. In a world where it's easy to get caught up in optimism or the hope that people will change, Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is within our control, our own response to circumstances. The next time you notice a red flag, instead of waiting for things to improve, ask yourself, is this situation or person worth my time and energy? If the answer is no, take the necessary steps to protect yourself and your well-being. By trusting our intuition and recognizing red flags, we prevent ourselves from being manipulated or taken advantage of. In doing so, we align ourselves with Stoic wisdom, ensuring that our relationships and actions are grounded in truth, not false hope. It's a difficult but necessary lesson in the practice of self-preservation and self-respect. You don't have to endure mistreatment or disregard for your boundaries just because you hope someone will change. By listening to your instincts, you empower yourself to make choices that safeguard your peace and align with your values. In the next section, we'll look at how forgiving too easily can contribute to being taken advantage of, and why true forgiveness, in line with Stoic. Reason 3. You forgive too easily. Forgiveness is often seen as a virtue, a path to healing and inner peace. Stoicism, however, challenges us to look deeper and reconsider what true forgiveness means. As Seneca wisely put it, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. But what happens when forgiveness is given too easily? Is it still a virtuous act, or can it actually enable harmful behaviors to persist? Consider this real-life example. Imagine you have a colleague who repeatedly takes credit for your work. You might initially forgive them, believing it to be an honest mistake or a miscommunication. Yet, as time goes on, you realize this pattern continues. Each time they take credit for something you've done, you let it slide. After all, you don't want to create tension or make things uncomfortable. But in doing so, you're giving them a free pass to exploit your hard work without consequence. Each act of forgiveness, while it may feel right in the moment, only reinforces the behavior you want to stop. It becomes a cycle. Your forgiveness allows their disrespect to continue, leaving you frustrated and drained without any real resolution. Stoicism teaches us that forgiveness is not about sweeping things under the rug or pretending that harmful actions don't matter. Instead, true forgiveness is paired with accountability. When someone wrongs you repeatedly, the issue isn't the injury itself, it's the absence of any corrective action. By forgiving without consequences, we inadvertently allow the wrongdoing to continue unchecked. The Stoic solution is not to withhold forgiveness, but to attach it to the expectation that the person will make things right. Forgiveness, in this sense, should serve as a means of liberation, not just for the person who has wronged you, but for yourself as well. Forgiving too easily can lead to resentment, especially if you continually allow someone to exploit your kindness or generosity. It's not about holding a grudge or letting anger consume you. Rather, it's about protecting your dignity and setting clear boundaries. Seneca's quote reminds us that unrestrained anger can be more damaging than the offense itself. But that doesn't mean we should allow the offense to continue unaddressed. True forgiveness involves acknowledging the harm done and requiring accountability. It's about taking responsibility for your own peace, making it clear to others that their actions have consequences, and ensuring that you are not allowing your boundaries to be trampled. Consider how this would play out in another scenario. You're in a romantic relationship where your partner repeatedly breaks promises and shows little regard for your feelings. Each time they apologize, you forgive them, hoping they'll change, but the behavior never stops. Over time, you begin to feel taken for granted. Your trust erodes, and your emotional energy is drained. In this case, forgiveness without action or change only fuels the toxic behavior. The solution here is not to stop forgiving, but to connect forgiveness with accountability. When you forgive, it should be with the understanding that the person acknowledges the wrong and is willing to make amends. Without this, your forgiveness becomes an enabler rather than a path to healing. The Stoic view of forgiveness emphasizes that it is not a passive act of letting go of all grievances without expectation. Instead, it is an active process that requires both wisdom and strength. It involves recognizing that while you can forgive, you also need to protect yourself from being exploited. Forgiveness becomes meaningful when it is tied to the expectation of change. If the person you forgive continues to repeat the same mistakes, it is your responsibility to reevaluate the relationship and ensure that your boundaries are respected. In the end, forgiveness, when paired with accountability, empowers both you and the other person. It allows you to move forward with peace, without the lingering burden of unresolved resentment, but it also sends a clear message. You will not tolerate disrespect or manipulation. Forgiveness in this sense becomes a tool for personal growth. It teaches others to respect your boundaries and helps you maintain your own emotional integrity. By applying Stoic principles, you can navigate these situations with strength, clarity, and a deep sense of self-respect. Next, we'll discuss how staying silent when disrespected can lead to being taken advantage of, and why speaking up is a crucial act of self-respect. Reason 4. You stay silent when disrespected. We've all been in situations where we've felt disrespected, yet chose to remain silent. It might have been during a meeting when a colleague interrupted us, or in a conversation where our opinions were dismissed without consideration. When this happens, it's easy to convince ourselves that staying silent is the mature response, that by not reacting, we avoid conflict or unnecessary drama. But the reality is that silence, in these moments, may actually signal to others that their behavior is acceptable, allowing them to continue taking advantage of us. Stoicism teaches us that this approach is not only passive, but potentially harmful to our sense of self-respect. As Marcus Aurelius wisely put it, the best way to avenge yourself is to not be like him who performed the injury. This quote invites us to consider that responding to disrespect by becoming disrespectful ourselves only perpetuates the cycle of negativity. Stoicism does not promote vengeance or reacting in anger, but rather it emphasizes the power of self-control and the importance of maintaining our dignity, no matter how others behave. It's not about retaliating with hostility. It's about asserting your boundaries and standing firm in your self-worth. Let's consider a real-life example. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague repeatedly interrupts you, dismissing your ideas and dominating the conversation. Each time you remain quiet, hoping they'll eventually notice and allow you to speak. But the interruptions continue, and with every instance, your sense of frustration and resentment builds. By staying silent, you're inadvertently teaching this colleague that their behavior is acceptable. They don't see your frustration because you haven't expressed it, and they continue to disregard your voice. In this situation, the Stoic solution is simple but powerful: calm assertiveness. Instead of staying silent or passively allowing the disrespect to continue, Stoicism encourages you to stand up for yourself with confidence. You can say something like, "Excuse me, I wasn't finished," or "I'd like to finish my point before we move on." There is strength in speaking up calmly and assertively, without aggression or defensiveness. This response doesn't escalate the conflict. It simply sets a clear boundary that you expect respect and consideration, both of which are crucial for preserving your peace of mind and self-worth. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is within our control and to respond rationally to situations. We cannot control the actions of others, but we can control how we respond to them. If we allow others to disrespect us without taking any action, we are essentially giving them permission to continue treating us poorly. On the other hand, when we assert ourselves calmly, we take control of the situation without letting our emotions dictate our actions. This is the essence of Stoic resilience, the ability to remain composed and assertive no matter the behavior of others. It's important to recognize that standing up for yourself doesn't mean creating conflict or being confrontational. Stoicism is not about avoiding conflict at all costs, but about handling it in a way that preserves your integrity. By speaking up, you're not only protecting yourself, but also teaching others how to treat you with respect. Over time, this will lead to healthier, more balanced interactions and a greater sense of self-respect. Imagine the shift in dynamic if you began to assert your boundaries in similar situations. Your colleagues would likely start to recognize your value and begin to respect your voice. By consistently standing up for yourself in a calm and composed manner, You teach others to interact with you in a way that fosters mutual respect and understanding. Remaining silent in the face of disrespect may seem like the easier option, but in the long run, it compromises your integrity and allows others to take advantage of you. The Stoic approach is to respond with courage and self-respect, calmly asserting your boundaries while remaining true to your values. By doing so, you not only protect yourself, but also create an environment where your voice is heard and your presence is respected. This not only helps you navigate situations of disrespect, but also fosters healthier, more meaningful relationships. Next, let's explore how our tendency to see the best in others can sometimes lead us to overlook patterns of behavior that undermine our self-worth. How can Stoicism help us navigate this tendency and protect ourselves from emotional harm? Let's dive in. Reason 5. You see the best in everyone. One of the most admirable qualities a person can have is the ability to see the best in others. We've all been there. A friend or colleague disappoints us with their actions, but we hold on to the hope that they'll change. We convince ourselves that with enough patience or understanding, they'll eventually meet our expectations. But in doing so, we may set ourselves up for repeated disappointment. The Stoic philosophy reminds us that while it's good to maintain an optimistic view of people, we must also accept them as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This is a profound reminder that when we already have an idealized version of someone in our minds, we are often blind to their true nature. We may think that if we just give them more time or if we are patient enough, they'll change their behavior. But the truth is, change can only happen when someone recognizes the need for it and chooses to act on it themselves. You cannot force change upon someone else, and by expecting them to meet an ideal that they may not even share, you set yourself up for frustration. Let's look at a real-life example. Imagine you're in a friendship with someone who frequently cancels plans at the last minute. At first, you might think, they're just busy. They must be having a rough time. But over time, this pattern continues, and their lack of respect for your time becomes more evident. Yet, you still hold on to the hope that they'll eventually prioritize you and stop canceling. You see the potential for change in them, but in reality, their behavior reflects a lack of consideration, not an inability to change. In this situation, the Stoic solution is clear. Accept people as they are and set realistic expectations. Stoicism teaches us that true peace comes from understanding and accepting reality, not from clinging to an illusion. People are who they are, and while they may change over time, that change can only come when they decide for themselves that they want to grow. It's important to stop holding on to the belief that someone will change to meet your expectations if they haven't shown any willingness to do so. Instead, look at their actions, not their potential. When we base our expectations on how people actually behave, rather than on who we want them to become, we protect ourselves from unnecessary hurt. This doesn't mean we should stop caring for others or stop being supportive. On the contrary, Stoicism encourages us to be understanding and compassionate, but within the context of clear boundaries and realistic expectations. For example, instead of giving up on a friend entirely, you can choose to set a boundary. You might say, "I understand that life gets in the way, but if we continue to make plans and you cancel last minute, I'll need to reconsider whether we can make this work." By doing this, You are honoring your own needs and preventing resentment from building. The Stoic practice of self-reflection helps in recognizing when we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. If we are consistently investing our time and energy into relationships that don't align with our values or where the other person isn't showing effort, we need to reassess. In relationships, it's essential to ensure that both parties are contributing and growing together, not that one is constantly striving for something that isn't being reciprocated. Accepting the reality of the situation allows us to protect our emotional well-being and avoid further frustration. It's crucial to understand that Stoicism doesn't advocate for cutting people off or becoming cold-hearted. Instead, it teaches us to maintain a balanced perspective. By accepting people as they are, we take control of our expectations and prevent ourselves from being repeatedly let down. This practice doesn't just apply to friendships, but also to work relationships, family dynamics, and romantic partnerships. It's about knowing that we can still care for others, but we need to set boundaries and adjust our expectations to avoid disappointment. Now, let's turn to the next reason people often find themselves taken advantage of: the fear of being alone. How does this fear affect our relationships, and what can Stoicism teach us about embracing solitude? Let's explore that. Reason 6. You fear loneliness. The fear of loneliness is a powerful emotion that can shape many of our decisions, often in ways that don't serve our best interests. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that any relationship is better than being alone. This fear can lead us to stay in toxic situations, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even a job. All because the idea of solitude seems more daunting than the discomfort of staying where we are. Stoicism teaches us that while loneliness can feel painful, it's often in solitude that we find the clarity and strength needed for personal growth and empowerment. Imagine being in a relationship where you feel unappreciated, disrespected, or even mistreated. Despite the emotional toll it takes on you, you convince yourself that leaving would mean being alone, and the thought of loneliness feels unbearable. You might rationalize that the discomfort of staying in the relationship is better than facing the fear of solitude. But in doing so, you sacrifice your peace and self-worth. The Stoics would advise us to challenge this fear, not run from it. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, teaches us that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Our ability to respond to loneliness is within our control. Rather than allowing this fear to dictate our actions, we have the power to choose how we approach solitude. Loneliness, in the Stoic view, is not a punishment, but an opportunity. It is an opportunity for introspection, growth, and self-discovery. When we face the discomfort of being alone, we are given the chance to reconnect with ourselves, to reflect on our values, and to reassess what truly matters to us. Being alone doesn't have to mean being incomplete. In fact, Stoicism encourages us to cultivate inner strength through solitude. Marcus Aurelius, another key Stoic philosopher, wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." This insight reveals the Stoic perspective that solitude, when embraced, can become a sanctuary, a place where we find our most authentic selves, free from the distractions and influences of others. Take, for example, a person who stays in a toxic friendship, constantly giving their time, energy, and care, but never receiving the same in return. This individual fears that if they let go of the friendship, they will be left alone. The fear of loneliness keeps them trapped in a cycle of one-sided emotional investment. However, By clinging to this toxic relationship, they are not allowing themselves the space to grow or to connect with people who truly respect and value them. The Stoic solution to this is to embrace solitude, not as a curse, but as a path to personal empowerment. In solitude, they can learn to re-establish their sense of self-worth, prioritize their needs, and ultimately build stronger, healthier relationships. It's important to remember that embracing solitude doesn't mean abandoning connection. The Stoics valued friendship and community, but they also recognized the importance of self-reliance and inner peace. By learning to be comfortable with being alone, we develop a deeper understanding of who we are and what we want in our relationships. We stop settling for connections that drain us and start investing in relationships that nourish us. Solitude offers us the space to reflect on our goals, values, and desires, and it allows us to set clearer boundaries in our relationships. When we learn to stand on our own, we free ourselves from the fear of being alone and open the door to more meaningful connections. As Seneca wisely said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." In embracing solitude, we reclaim our autonomy, and in doing so, we become more capable of fostering genuine reciprocal relationships. To overcome the fear of loneliness, we must first confront it directly. Rather than avoiding solitude, we can choose to engage with it as a tool for growth. When we do, we unlock a profound sense of peace and empowerment. It's only when we are comfortable being alone that we can fully appreciate the value of our connections with others. With this newfound understanding of solitude, we can now look at how setting clear boundaries can help us avoid being taken advantage of. Let's explore how to protect ourselves by standing firm in our values and limits. In this video, we've explored 6 key reasons why people often take advantage of us, and how Stoicism offers powerful solutions to protect our peace and assert our self-worth. We've learned that by setting clear boundaries, trusting our intuition, and not allowing ourselves to be manipulated by the fear of loneliness or the desire to please others, we can stop being taken advantage of. Stoicism teaches us the importance of self-respect and self-awareness, and these lessons are crucial to living a life of integrity and strength. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these reasons resonated with you the most? Have you ever experienced a situation where you felt taken advantage of, and how did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below, as your insights can help others on their Stoic journey as well. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Teachings today for more Stoic insights that can enhance your life. Remember, embracing the Stoic path isn't just about learning philosophy. It's about applying it in real-life situations to create a life of greater peace, strength, and clarity. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you in the comments.